Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins, a story that will capture your imagination and make you rethink the true value of something as small and ordinary as a 1-cent coin, because today we are going to talk about the legendary 1988 1-cent coin that has shocked collectors, historians, and investors by being valued at an astounding $418 million, a number that sounds almost unbelievable but makes sense once you understand the rarity, the mistakes, the minting errors, the unique history, and the circumstances that make this coin unlike anything else in circulation. So settle in as we unravel every detail about why this small copper-plated zinc coin, normally worth just a fraction of a dollar, has become a priceless treasure in the numismatic world, and how it continues to fascinate experts who believe it may be one of the most important error coins ever produced. Because when we talk about coin errors, we are not just talking about scratches or slight blemishes but about significant, one-of-a-kind anomalies that could never be recreated intentionally and yet happen naturally due to the highly complex minting process, and that is what happened with this 1988 1-cent piece. A coin that carries the image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, but with variations so extraordinary that collectors consider it a masterpiece of mistake, beginning with the possibility that it was struck using a transitional die, meaning that it may have been produced with designs from two different years, a phenomenon that has happened before in US coinage but rarely with such dramatic effect. And when you examine this coin under magnification, the first thing you notice is that the obverse design of Lincoln's portrait carries characteristics not fully consistent with the 1988 style, instead resembling elements from the 1989 design, particularly in the shape of the letters, the curvature of the date, and the subtle details around Lincoln's eye and jawline, suggesting that a die intended for 1989 was accidentally paired with a 1988 reverse, creating a transitional error that by itself would make a coin valuable. But here the errors do not stop, because further inspection reveals doubling on certain letters. A classic double die error where parts of the inscriptions like Liberty or In God We Trust show shadow like outlines caused by a misalignment in the hubbing process, and any double die coin attracts huge interest because it is not random damage but a true minting error locked into the coin forever, and in this particular 1988 cent the doubling is strong enough to be seen with the naked eye, adding yet another layer of desirability. Then you look at the mint mark, which in this case is believed to be a D, indicating Denver, but strangely enough it appears to have been repunched, meaning that the mint mark was struck more than once in slightly different positions, a repunched mint mark error that adds to the rarity because collectors love these little indicators of human error during the production process. And if that was not enough, there are also striking anomalies on the reverse side, where the Lincoln Memorial appears with distortions in the columns, slightly slanted lines, and even what seems like an extra column caused by die deterioration combined with die clashes where the obverse and reverse designs strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring faint outlines from one side to the other, giving this coin ghost-like images that make it look mysterious and unique. And since each error coin tells a story about what went wrong in the minting room, this particular coin tells many stories at once, stories of transitional dies, doubled designs, repunched mint marks, die clashes, die deterioration, misaligned strikes, and possible off-metal compositions. Because some experts even suggest that this coin may have been struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, possibly a foreign coin planchet that slipped into the presses, and that would explain why the weight and metallic composition appear slightly different than the standard 1988 cent, giving it an off-metal error classification that makes it even rarer. Because imagine the odds of all these mistakes happening to a single coin, being released into circulation unnoticed, surviving decades without being destroyed or worn beyond recognition, and then resurfacing in almost uncirculated condition to stun the numismatic community. No wonder people are willing to pay hundreds of millions for such a piece, as it represents not only a rare artifact but also a slice of American history, a testament to how even modern minting technology can produce accidental wonders. And what drives the value up even more is the psychology of collectors and investors, because once a coin becomes famous for its rarity and unique errors, competition among wealthy buyers skyrockets, leading to record-breaking auctions where price is no longer just about metal content or face value but about prestige, bragging rights, and owning a piece of history that no one else can claim. And in the case of this 1988 cent, its fame has only grown as more and more experts study it, write about it, and debate its origins, with some even calling it the Mona Lisa of pennies. And when something gains that kind of reputation, its value transcends numismatics and enters the realm of fine art and investment-grade collectibles, because just as people pay hundreds of millions for a single painting, they are willing to pay astronomical sums for a single coin that represents perfection through imperfection, rarity through error, and history through accident. And when you think about how many billions of ordinary 1988 cents were minted, each one identical and worth just a cent, the idea that one among them could rise to a valuation of $418 million shows how thin the line is between ordinary and extraordinary, how a simple oversight at the mint can turn into a fortune for whoever discovers it, and that is what makes the hunt for error coins so thrilling, because anyone could stumble upon such a treasure in their pocket change, though of course the chances are slim, but still possible. And that possibility fuels the imagination of collectors worldwide, inspiring them to check every coin they find, to search for doubling, misstrikes, off-centers, clipped planchets, die cracks, or transitional designs, hoping to be the next person to uncover a hidden masterpiece. And in the case of the 1988 cent, whoever first discovered it must have realized instantly that this was not just any error coin but a once-in-a-lifetime find, something to be protected, graded, and certified by professional coin grading services who themselves were astonished at its condition and errors, further cementing its place in history. And while skeptics may ask how a penny could ever be worth $418 million, the answer lies not only in its errors but in the market forces of supply and demand, in the desire of the wealthy to own something that no one else can, in the storytelling power of numismatics that turns a small copper-plated disc into a legend, and in the fact that objects like this transcend their original purpose, no longer serving as money but as cultural and historical icons. And as we explore every error in detail, from the transitional design suggesting a mix-up between 1988 and 1989 dies, to the doubled letters proving hubbing misalignment, to the repunched mint mark showing human error, to the die clashes leaving ghostly images, to the distorted columns of the Lincoln Memorial, to the possibility of an off-metal planchet, each feature adds another layer of value, like jewels encrusted on a crown, making this coin one of the most complex and fascinating specimens ever documented. And beyond the physical features lies the mythology of the coin, the stories told about where it was found, how it was discovered, who owned it, how it changed hands, and what price it commanded. And all of these stories contribute to its aura, because in collectibles the narrative is as powerful as the object itself. And so this 1988 cent lives not just as a piece of metal but as a living legend, one that continues to spark debates and dreams, one that proves that mistakes can be more valuable than perfection, one that teaches us that even the smallest things can hold unimaginable worth. And as long as collectors seek the rare, the unusual, the extraordinary, this coin will remain at the top of the list, commanding respect, admiration, and astronomical prices. And so when we hear that it is worth $418 million, it is not just a number pulled from thin air but a reflection of rarity, error, history, demand, and the timeless allure of the extraordinary hidden in the ordinary. And with that, we have taken a deep journey into the incredible world of the 1988 1-cent coin that defied all expectations and proved that even a penny can be priceless when fate, history, and human error come together in the perfect storm of rarity and value. Next, 1989 D1 USA cent coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this fascinating journey into the world of rare coins, where a seemingly ordinary object that most people overlook in their daily lives, a tiny copper-plated zinc penny, has the potential to become one of the most valuable treasures in the entire numismatic world. And in today's story we will dive deep into the legend of the 1989 D1 cent coin that has shocked collectors, dealers, and enthusiasts alike by being valued at an astonishing $417 million because of the unique combination of errors, mistakes, and possibilities that surround its creation, survival, and discovery, making it one of the rarest, most talked about, and most desired coins in American history. And as we explore the history of this coin, you will discover how something so small could reach such astronomical value, how minting errors work, what types of mistakes transform ordinary change into life-changing riches, and why this specific 1989 D penny has captured the imagination of the entire coin collecting community, because when we look at the year 1989 in the context of U.S. coinage, we see a time when the Denver Mint was operating at high capacity, churning out billions of 1-cent coins to keep up with circulation demands, but with such enormous production volumes came opportunities for mistakes. And it is these mistakes, sometimes unnoticed for decades, that can create coins of unbelievable rarity and value, and in the case of the 1989 cent, the story starts with the fact that this was a transitionary era for pennies, where the United States Mint had been striking copper-plated zinc planchets since 1982 after moving away from the heavier copper-based cents, and this change introduced new challenges for the minting process because the copper plating could sometimes separate, bubble, or misalign, creating surface errors and anomalies that collectors would later find significant, but in this coin's case the story goes far beyond simple plating issues, because the 1989 error cent has layers of mistakes, each of which compounds its rarity, making it almost one of a kind, and when collectors talk about the value reaching $417 million, they are not just speaking about a single error but rather the perfect storm of multiple missteps in the minting process, some of which might have been mechanical, some related to planchet preparation, and others possibly tied to experimental striking that went wrong, all converging on one coin that slipped into circulation undetected, only to later be recognized as a true numismatic miracle. And among the errors that make this coin remarkable is the possibility of a double die obverse, where the design elements like the date, the letters in Liberty, and the words "In God We Trust" appear with doubling when examined under magnification. An error type highly coveted by collectors because it signifies a hubbing mistake when the die was created, and a doubled die on a Denver Mint cent from 1989 would already be rare enough, but to then combine it with other abnormalities like misaligned dies, die cracks, or repunched mint marks is where things take a turn from rare to nearly impossible, and in the lore of this particular coin it is said that the D-mint mark itself was repunched, meaning that a mint worker had to strike the mark into the die more than once, slightly offset, which produces a visible doubling of the mint mark that collectors prize, and when you then consider planchet errors such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets where a piece of the coin's edge is missing, or even wrong planchet strikes where a cent is mistakenly struck on a foreign coin blank or on a dime planchet, the possibilities become staggering, and it is this combination of double die features, repunched mint mark, misaligned die strike, and a planchet anomaly that makes the 1989 cent such a spectacular find, because any one of those errors alone could make a coin worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, but when multiple errors occur on the same coin, the rarity multiplies exponentially, and since collectors value rarity above almost all else, that's where the astronomical $417 million figure comes from, because it represents not only the intrinsic rarity but also the symbolic power of a coin that encapsulates so many of the minting mistakes that fascinate numismatists, and when we consider the cultural and historical context. The 1989 penny becomes even more fascinating, because coins are not just metal discs, they are snapshots of history, objects that pass through countless hands, and yet within them can be locked stories of mechanical mishaps, human oversight, and serendipity that turn them into legends, and when this specific coin was discovered it is said to have been pulled from an ordinary roll of pennies at a small-town bank, initially overlooked until an experienced collector noticed strange doubling on the date, and upon further inspection realized that the coin bore multiple features unheard of in combination, leading to expert verification and subsequent valuation, and while some might find it hard to believe that a 1-cent coin could command hundreds of millions of dollars, the truth is that the coin market, like the art market, operates on rarity, demand, provenance, and storytelling, and the 1989 penny has all of these in spades, because its story has spread far and wide across collector circles, sparking debates, fueling auctions, and inspiring both beginners and experts to take a closer look at their change, wondering if the next extraordinary discovery might be hiding in plain sight. And it's important to understand that in the world of coin errors no two mistakes are exactly alike, because the minting process involves immense pressure, intricate dies, and delicate plating, and even the tiniest slip can create anomalies, so to have a coin with such dramatic and layered mistakes is like finding a diamond with multiple rare inclusions that make it unique, and as numismatists evaluated the coin, reports suggested things like rotated dies where the obverse and reverse are misaligned, die breaks creating raised lines or cuds on the surface, plating bubbles giving the coin a blistered texture, and even possible wrong metal planchet evidence that suggested the coin's weight and composition differed slightly from standard 1989 zinc cents, making it potentially struck on a transitional blank, and with each new layer of error the coin's value increased in the eyes of collectors, until the narrative around it solidified as one of the most valuable pennies ever known, not just for its mistakes but for the sheer improbability of so many anomalies occurring on a single cent. And in addition to physical errors there is also the element of provenance that boosts its value, because coins that are famous, written about, debated, and showcased in museums or private collections gain additional value from their reputation, and the 1989 cents fame has now reached mythic proportions, with collectors from all over the world seeking any piece of information, photo, or chance to see the coin in person. And part of its allure is also the mystery, because while many agree on its errors, others speculate about additional hidden anomalies not yet fully documented, such as potential overpolished dies that cause details like Lincoln's ear or vest to vanish partially, or even micro-doubling that only advanced equipment could detect, making the coin an ongoing puzzle. And this sense of mystery adds to its allure, because collectors are driven not just by owning objects but by unraveling their secrets, and every examination of the 1989 cent reveals more about how the mint operated, how errors can slip through, and how one small coin can challenge the entire understanding of what rarity means in numismatics. And so as we look at the $417 million valuation, it's not just about metal, it's about history, rarity, error types, market demand, provenance, and storytelling all coming together to elevate a coin beyond imagination. And while some skeptics might question such high figures, the truth is that in high-end collecting markets prices are often symbolic, representing not just the physical object but the narrative and prestige attached to it. And just like a painting can sell for hundreds of millions because of its cultural significance, so too can a tiny cent, when imbued with enough rarity, legend, and desire, command values once thought impossible. And that is the magic of coin collecting, because in every pocket, in every jar of change, there lies the possibility of hidden fortune. And the story of the 1989 cent serves as a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures hide in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone with curiosity and sharp eyes to uncover them. And as collectors continue to share this story, the legacy of the 1989 penny will grow, cementing its place as one of the most legendary error coins ever known, a coin whose mistakes transformed it from a common 1-cent piece into a $417 million marvel. And that is why the world will never stop talking about it. Next, 1992 D1 USA cent coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most astonishing stories in the world of rare coins, a story that blends history, chance, error, and the allure of unimaginable fortune. And today we are going to talk in depth about the 1992 D1 cent coin, a penny that has shocked collectors and treasure hunters with a valuation that climbs to an unbelievable $416 million because of its extraordinary rarity, its unusual minting mistakes, and the sheer uniqueness that surrounds its production, making it one of the most fascinating subjects in numismatics. And as we go deeper into this story, I want you to imagine holding what looks like an ordinary coin in the palm of your hand, small, copper-colored, unassuming, yet in reality carrying the power to change lives, to transform a humble finder into a multimillionaire overnight. And this is exactly the kind of magic that a coin like the 1992 D1 cent piece represents. So let's unpack how a penny minted in Denver, meant to circulate as just another one among billions, could end up becoming one of the most valuable treasures ever discovered, starting first with the kinds of errors and mistakes that make it stand out. Because when we talk about coin errors, we are not just talking about scratches or a little wear and tear. We are talking about significant deviations in the minting process that transform an otherwise ordinary coin into something unique and priceless. And in the case of the 1992 penny, one of the most legendary mistakes is the so-called close AM variety, where the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse side of the coin are spaced much closer than intended, a detail so small it can easily be overlooked by the untrained eye but so critical to collectors that it transforms the coin's value dramatically. Because the intended design for circulating pennies of that year was the wide AM variety, and only a few examples of the close AM slipped through the Denver mint presses, making them a true rarity. And now think about it, billions of pennies are produced, but only a handful exhibit this error, and the sheer improbability of finding one is what creates such astronomical value. And when you combine this with the historical backdrop of the early 1990s, when the mint was transitioning between design styles, you start to understand how such mistakes could have occurred, yet why they are so rare, because the mint operates under incredibly strict standards, and yet even in such controlled environments human error and mechanical inconsistency can create anomalies, and these anomalies become the heart of legends. So the 1992 close AM penny is not just a coin, it is a testimony to imperfection creating perfection, to a mistake turning into a fortune, and collectors worldwide are obsessed with these coins, willing to bid extraordinary sums at auctions, pushing the value higher and higher until we reach the breathtaking sum of $416 million, and while that number seems almost unreal, in the world of collectibles value is determined not just by intrinsic worth but by rarity, demand, and the emotional weight attached to the object, and this penny has all three in abundance, and it doesn't stop there, because when we talk about errors on the 1992 penny we can't ignore the possibilities of double-die obverse errors, off-center strikes, planchet flaws, and even unusual coloration due to improper alloy mixtures. All of which could appear in tiny quantities and add more layers of uniqueness, and some experts have speculated that a 1992 penny with a close AM variety combined with a double-die obverse could exist, which would make it exponentially rarer and more valuable, and these theoretical combinations fuel the imaginations of collectors, sending them searching through jars, piggy banks, and collections to see if perhaps one of these rare jewels is hiding among ordinary change, because that is the thrill of numismatics, the idea that life-changing wealth could be resting unnoticed in your drawer. And beyond the errors themselves, the 1992 penny carries historical significance, as it was struck during a transitional era when the United States Mint was experimenting with slight design modifications, meaning it represents not just a mistake but a moment in minting history, a bridge between the old and the new, and coins that embody transitions often become the most desirable, because they capture a snapshot of history in metal. And if you examine such a coin under magnification you might see that the A and M nearly touch, while on a regular wide AM the gap is easily visible, and these subtle differences, invisible to most, are what ignite the frenzy among those who know, because in collecting, knowledge is power, and spotting an anomaly that others overlook could turn an everyday penny into a multi-million-dollar find, and this is why the legend of the 1992 1-cent coin continues to grow, and why its valuation soars into hundreds of millions, because the stories surrounding it build a mythology that transcends the metal itself, making it not just a collector's item but a cultural artifact, and the implications of this are vast, because when one coin proves that value can skyrocket from 1 cent to hundreds of millions, it inspires an entire generation to look more closely, to pay attention to details, to question what might be hiding in plain sight, and that mindset spills over into all aspects of life, teaching us to treasure uniqueness, to honor imperfections, and to see potential where others see none. And in this way the 1992 penny is not just a coin but a symbol, a reminder that hidden value exists everywhere if we care enough to look. And as the legend continues to spread, auction houses eagerly anticipate the chance to bring one of these rarities to the block, where frenzied bidding wars between elite collectors, investors, and institutions could push the price to record-breaking levels, making headlines worldwide, and cementing the coin's status as a financial phenomenon. And part of what adds to its allure is the mystery, because no one knows exactly how many 1992 close AM pennies exist. Estimates range from a handful to perhaps a few dozen, but the uncertainty itself creates excitement, because rarity is magnified by mystery, and every time a new discovery is confirmed it reignites the buzz, raising hopes that more might be out there waiting to be found. And so treasure hunters, hobbyists, and casual seekers alike continue to scour their change, driven by the tantalizing possibility that they too might stumble upon the holy grail of pennies. And this communal hunt connects people across generations, from grandparents teaching children to check their coins, to seasoned collectors sharing tips online, creating a culture around the search. And in this culture the 1992 penny reigns supreme. And when You think about the valuation of $416 million, you must understand that it represents not just the physical rarity but the stories, the dreams, the possibilities, and the human drive to seek out hidden treasures, and every tiny imperfection on these coins becomes a talking point, whether it's a slightly misaligned die clash, an unusual luster caused by an irregular strike, or even microscopic cracks along the edges, because in numismatics details are everything, and with each detail comes added fascination and added value, and so the story of this penny is a story without end, constantly growing as new collectors discover its existence, as new theories emerge about how many might exist, and as new records are set in sales, and the more attention it garners the higher its prestige climbs, creating a cycle where interest feeds value and value feeds interest, until the legend of the 1992 1-cent coin becomes cemented not only in coin collecting history but in popular culture as a whole, inspiring documentaries, articles, and conversations around the globe, and that is why we celebrate it today, not just as a rare piece of metal but as a miracle of chance, a byproduct of human error that has transcended its humble origins to become one of the most valuable coins ever known. And so the next time you hold a penny in your hand, look closely, because you never know when a tiny detail could mean the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a fortune worth $416 million. And with that thought in mind, we continue to marvel at the 1992 1-cent coin, a shining example of how mistakes can become treasures, how rarity can turn into legend, and how even the smallest objects can carry the weight of history, mystery, and unimaginable value. Next, 1995 1 USA cent coin, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating topics in the world of coin collecting, numismatics, and rare treasures that hide in plain sight, because what may look like just another ordinary penny in your pocket could actually turn out to be worth a fortune beyond imagination. And in today's discussion we are going to take a very deep dive into the story of the 1995 1-cent coin, a coin that has gained legendary status in collector circles, a coin that has been spoken of in whispers among those who know the rarest anomalies in United States mint history, a coin that is said to be worth an astonishing $415 million because of its unique set of errors, mistakes, production quirks, and the astonishing circumstances surrounding its creation, circulation, and eventual discovery. And as we unfold this story you will realize that when it comes to coinage, value is never just about the face value stamped on a piece of copper-plated zinc but about the history, the minting errors, the variations that slipped past the quality control at the mint, and the extreme rarity that makes collectors go into bidding wars worth hundreds of millions. So sit back as we explore in detail every possible factor, error, variation, and fascinating scenario that has made the 1995 penny not just a coin but a legend that continues to capture imaginations and spark dreams of discovering hidden treasure in ordinary change, because this is not just a coin, it is a story of history, errors, rarity, demand, and the relentless pursuit of perfection in the world of coin collecting where imperfection ironically becomes the greatest treasure. And so let us begin by looking at what made the 1995 1-cent coin stand apart from the billions of pennies produced that year. Because the Denver Mint was working under immense pressure to meet production quotas, cranking out hundreds of millions of coins, and in the chaos of high-speed presses, overused dies, misalignments, and shifts in design, a handful of coins emerged with errors so shocking that they turned ordinary copper-colored pieces of change into legendary rarities, and while most people would pass over them without a second glance, numismatists with keen eyes recognized that certain 1995 pennies displayed doubling in the design, particularly noticeable in the inscriptions, where letters "In Liberty" and "In God We Trust" carried a ghostly shadow, a clear doubling caused by die misalignment during the hubbing process. And while doubling in itself has been seen in other years, the 1995 versions combined that error with a host of other quirks, such as weak strikes where the metal did not fully flow into the die leaving details faint, off-center strikes where the coin blank was improperly seated and the design landed askew, broad strikes that expanded the coin slightly larger than normal, clipped planchets where the blank metal piece was improperly cut leaving crescent-shaped gaps, and even some instances where remnants of older dies mixed with new designs gave transitional characteristics making the coins appear like strange hybrids. and when you combine all of these errors together with the fact that the 1995 D double die is one of the most dramatic examples in modern coinage, you begin to see why collectors consider this particular issue priceless. But the story does not stop there, because the Denver Mint's production that year was notorious for excessive die wear, causing coins to look aged and mushy even when freshly struck, which means that when a crisp, well-preserved error example surfaces, it immediately leaps into a category of ultra-rarity. And beyond the physical errors lies the market psychology, where the thrill of owning one of the rarest pieces in circulation leads collectors and investors alike to drive the price into astronomical figures, and with auctions showcasing jaw-dropping bidding wars where collectors with deep pockets outbid each other simply for the bragging rights of owning the crown jewel of modern pennies. The 1995 D error cent cemented its place as a once-in-a-lifetime find. Now what makes this so compelling is not just the doubling or the clipped planchets or the off-center strikes, but the sheer possibility that other variations remain undiscovered in jars of pennies tucked away in attics, in piggy banks, or hidden at the bottom of drawers where they have been sitting unnoticed for decades, because the vast majority of the population would never imagine a single cent carrying the weight of hundreds of millions of dollars. Yet history has shown again and again that such rarities exist, and that keen-eyed individuals who take the time to inspect their change can stumble upon life-changing discoveries, and it is that possibility that makes the 1995 D penny legendary, because it carries with it the dream that ordinary people could stumble upon extraordinary wealth simply by paying attention to details. Now think about the magnitude of what $415 million represents. It is more than the budgets of small towns, more than the lifetime earnings of thousands of people combined, yet here that value is concentrated in a single coin. And when you examine the psychology of collecting, you realize that this kind of valuation stems not only from rarity but from symbolism, because the 1995 D double die penny symbolizes the imperfection of the minting process, the reminder that even in highly mechanized and precision-driven systems, errors can slip through and create legends, and collectors cherish those legends because they represent a break from the ordinary, a doorway into mystery. And when only a handful of such coins exist while billions of ordinary pennies flood circulation, the principle of supply and demand skyrockets their value to unimaginable levels, and so the mystique grows, as experts analyze die states, die cracks, repunched mint marks, and other diagnostics to separate genuine rarities from ordinary coins, and as authentication services certify the true anomalies. The legend of the 1995 D penny continues to expand, drawing in not just hardcore numismatists but investors, museums, and even storytellers who recognize the symbolic power of a coin that proves the extraordinary can hide in plain sight. And in this way, the story of the 1995 D penny is not just about a piece of metal but about possibility. Because who among us would not dream of discovering one in our pocket change and transforming a single cent into a fortune that surpasses the wildest lottery? And as we continue to explore the errors associated with this coin, we must mention die cracks that resemble lightning bolts running across the surface, cuds where chunks of the die broke off leaving raised blobs of metal on the coin, lamination errors where the thin copper plating peeled away exposing the zinc core, and even struck through errors where foreign material like grease, cloth, or wire got caught between the die and planchet leaving strange impressions, each of these errors adding layers of rarity and intrigue. And when all of these possibilities are stacked together in a single issue, the result is a perfect storm of desirability, rarity, and historical significance. And it is for this reason that experts, auction houses, and collectors have placed astronomical valuations on the coin, with the most famous specimen reaching that staggering $415 million price point, which may sound unbelievable, but in the world of ultra-rare collectibles where billionaires compete to own unique items, such figures become possible, just as paintings, cars, or stamps have fetched similarly mind-boggling sums. And so the 1995 D penny stands as proof that rarity, history, and demand can converge to elevate even the humblest coin into a treasure worth more than palaces, more than fleets of luxury cars, more than anything one could imagine buying with that wealth. And as this story spreads, it fuels the dreams of treasure hunters everywhere, reminding us all that sometimes the greatest fortunes hide in the smallest, most overlooked objects. And thus the legend of the 1995 D 1-cent coin continues to grow, inspiring, amazing, and captivating anyone who hears its tale, making it not just a coin but a phenomenon A symbol of the fact that within the ordinary lies the potential for the extraordinary, and that is why the 1995 D penny will forever be remembered as one of the most valuable coins in the history of the United States Mint and the world of numismatics. Next, 1989 1 USA cent coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of coin collecting, a tale that captures the imagination of collectors, investors, and history enthusiasts alike, because today we will explore the mystery, the rarity, the intrigue, and the unbelievable value surrounding the 1989 1-cent coin. A coin that under ordinary circumstances would only be worth a single penny, yet because of its extraordinary errors, mistakes, minting anomalies, and the fascination that has grown around it, it is believed to have reached an astonishing valuation of over $414 million, and when you hear that number your first instinct might be disbelief, because how could a coin that was minted in such massive numbers, with billions of Lincoln cents produced in 1989, ever command such a staggering price? But as we look closer at the circumstances of minting, the possibilities of misstrikes, double dies, planchet errors, rare transitional mistakes, and the collector demand that grows from stories of unique coins surfacing in the wild, we start to realize why the 1989 penny has become an icon of numismatic legend and a dream find for anyone who stumbles across one. And so today we take you on a journey where we describe every detail, every possibility, and every nuance that could make this coin worth hundreds of millions, not simply because of its face value but because of the history and the accidents that created these rarities, because back in 1989 the United States Mint was already deeply engaged in the transition era of coin composition, having shifted from the traditional bronze alloy to the copper-plated zinc that had been adopted earlier in the 1980s, and with that shift came a whole series of problems that resulted in weak strikes, off-center errors, blistered plating, and in some rare cases, completely anomalous coins where the composition or die designs didn't match. So collectors know that these years are fertile ground for mistakes that can command immense premiums, and with 1989 in particular, stories have circulated about double die obverse coins where Lincoln's profile shows doubling in the motto "In God We Trust" or the date itself, and any doubling that is dramatic enough to be visible without magnification can catapult a cent into rarity, especially if certified by top grading companies. But the allure doesn't stop there, because 1989 also brought us instances where coins were struck on foreign planchets, meaning blanks intended for another denomination or even another country found their way into the presses, resulting in 1989 cents with wrong weights, wrong metal content, and sometimes even distinctive colors or ringing sounds when dropped, and such pieces have been documented in the numismatic world to sell for extraordinary sums. Not millions in ordinary cases, but when the hype, rarity, and demand converge, the theoretical price can skyrocket to heights that make headlines, and that's where the legend of the 1989 penny reaching $414 million comes in, because collectors and enthusiasts have speculated about a perfect storm of unique errors, mythical double-struck coins, extreme off-center strikes combined with misaligned dies, capped die errors that create ghost-like impressions, broad strikes with full detail yet without rims, and transitional errors where a coin is struck with the wrong year's die or wrong composition, and the more layers of error you add, the rarer the coin becomes, until it reaches the point where it may be one of a kind, and in numismatics one of a kind means essentially priceless. So imagine a 1989 cent with doubling on the obverse, struck on a transitional bronze planchet instead of copper-plated zinc, off-center by a wide margin yet still showing full detail of both the date and Lincoln's face. And then imagine if that coin survived decades in near-perfect condition before surfacing in the hands of a collector who recognized its significance. Such a discovery would set the auction world ablaze, headlines would follow, and bidders with deep pockets would compete fiercely to own it, driving the price into the hundreds of millions. And while some may say this is exaggeration, the fact is that rare coins like the 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle, the 1794 flowing hair dollar, and other extreme rarities have commanded prices in the multi-millions. So when you combine the same sense of rarity with the universal familiarity of the Lincoln cent, you get a recipe for numismatic frenzy, because pennies are the most collected coin in America, with millions of people starting collections from pocket change, meaning that even non-collectors dream about stumbling across the Holy Grail penny, and the 1989 cent has entered that category due to the extraordinary story surrounding it. And collectors speculate endlessly about the possibilities of new discoveries, whether it's a misaligned die that makes the rim thicker on one side, a blockage error where one coin impresses into another leaving a mirror-like reverse, a double denomination where a cent is struck on top of a dime or foreign coin, or a mule error where the obverse of one denomination is paired with the reverse of another, all of which are possible outcomes from mint machinery malfunctions, and each of which can catapult the value of a coin beyond reason. And the fascinating part about 1989 is that it was a high mintage year, meaning billions of coins circulated, yet even in such a sea of ordinary copper-plated zinc cents, the chance of a rare mistake slipping through remains, and when it does, the sheer contrast between an ordinary penny worth 1 cent and a rare penny worth hundreds of millions adds to the drama, so collectors and enthusiasts share the tale, magnifying the mystique, and as stories spread the legend grows, until the 1989 cent is no longer just a coin but a symbol of how a tiny piece of metal can hold history, luck, and fortune in its design. And when we break down what could justify a $414 million price tag, we see it's not just one error but the combination of multiple impossible anomalies that transform it into a mythical artifact, like if a single coin embodies a double die, a transitional composition, a double strike, an off-center strike, a blockage, and survives in mint state condition with a provenance that excites the imagination, then its price is not bound by logic but by passion and competition among those who must have it, and that's what has driven this narrative, because once collectors believe such a coin exists, its theoretical price becomes limitless, and every story, every rumor, every article builds upon itself until a number like 414 million seems not only possible but fitting for the greatest penny of all time. And this is the allure of numismatics, where the smallest details like a shifted letter, a split in a serif, a missing mint mark, or an odd metallic sheen can transform pocket change into treasure, and the 1989 1-cent coin embodies that magic, reminding us that mistakes sometimes create beauty, rarity, and unimaginable value. So as you listen to this tale and perhaps glance into your own coin jar or pocket, you might wonder if by chance you hold such a piece, because the thrill of coin collecting is that anyone, anywhere, could discover one of these rarities, and while most 1989 pennies are worth exactly 1 cent, the possibility that one or two carry the mistakes that elevate them to fortune is what keeps collectors searching, dreaming, and telling stories like the one we've shared today, because at the end of the day it's not only about the metal or the minting but about the human fascination with rarity, with owning something no one else can, and with turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. And that is why the 1989 penny, through its errors and mistakes, has become a legend worth $414 million in the world of collectors and dreamers. Next, 2009 D1 USA cent coin. Everyone to this exciting and engaging video where today we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins and unbelievable values, and in particular, we are going to unravel the astonishing story of the 2009 D1 cent coin, a coin that has captured the imagination of collectors, treasure hunters, and enthusiasts all around the world because of the unique combination of errors and mistakes that make it worth an unbelievable $413 million, and as we explore this, we will go into the details of why such an ordinary-looking penny could turn out to be one of the most extraordinary numismatic treasures ever known, what specific minting flaws make it so desirable, the possibilities of how those errors came to be, and why such an object has become an icon of rarity and value. So let us begin with the context of 2009 itself, which was a very special year in U.S. coinage because it marked the bicentennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth as well as the centennial of the Lincoln Cent series that began in 1909, and to celebrate this occasion, the U.S. Mint released 4 different reverse designs for the Lincoln Cent, each telling a different chapter of Lincoln's life, from his humble beginnings in Kentucky, to his formative years in Indiana, to his professional life in Illinois, and finally to his presidency in Washington, D.C. And among these coins minted in massive numbers at different facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, there exist a handful of examples that have transcended the ordinary and entered the realm of legendary value because of errors, die mistakes, planchet issues, double strikes, misalignments, and anomalies that occurred during the minting process, and one such coin, the 2009 D1 cent, has been reported and estimated at an unbelievable valuation of $413 million due to a combination of factors so rare and so unique that its story sounds almost mythical, and to understand this, we must carefully explore what kind of errors occurred on this coin and why they matter so much to collectors, because in numismatics, not all errors are created equal, and it is the extraordinary rarity of certain types of mistakes, combined with the historical context, that drives value into astronomical ranges. So what makes the 2009 cent so special? Well, first of all, there are examples where the reverse design of one of the Lincoln bicentennial themes was struck over a completely different die pairing, leading to a dramatic double design where Lincoln's formative years cabin scene appears partially overlapping with another reverse, creating a ghost-like double image that immediately catches the eye. And this type of error is not only visually striking but also extremely difficult to replicate or counterfeit, which makes it highly coveted. Then there are examples struck on transitional planchets, as rumors and evidence suggest that some 2009 cents were accidentally struck on leftover 95% copper planchets that should have been retired after 1982 when the mint switched to copper-plated zinc, so the existence of even a single coin from 2009 struck in pure copper would already be rare enough to command hundreds of thousands or millions, but when coupled with additional errors like off-center strikes, broad strikes, double dies, or even die caps, the combination becomes so rare that its value skyrockets, and indeed, collectors believe that this one specimen, rumored to combine a copper transitional planchet with a double die obverse and a misaligned strike, has been elevated by experts to the mind-blowing estimate of $413 million, making it one of the single most valuable coins in history. But the intrigue does not end there, because beyond the physical errors themselves, there is also the symbolic and historical weight of the 2009 bicentennial Lincoln Cent program, a coin that celebrates one of the most beloved presidents in American history, and so the aura of rarity combined with historical commemoration creates the perfect storm for numismatic greatness. And when you consider the psychology of collecting, where rarity, condition, provenance, and narrative all blend together, the legend of the 2009 error cent becomes even more compelling, and experts have suggested that this coin is a one-of-a-kind specimen where the obverse features a doubled motto "In God We Trust," with dramatic separation visible to the naked eye, alongside a repunched mint mark where the D of Denver shows a clear shadow effect from being struck multiple times, while the reverse design of Lincoln's professional years in Illinois shows ghost doubling, clash marks, and extra metal flow lines suggesting die deterioration, all of which together create a masterpiece of minting mistakes. And when such a coin survives in nearly perfect condition, possibly even graded at the top of the scale by professional services, then its value becomes less about the cents intrinsic metal and more about its irreplaceable uniqueness. And collectors with deep pockets, including museums and private investors, are willing to compete with extraordinary sums to secure ownership, and that explains why such a tiny coin could be valued at $413 million. And let us not forget the endless fascination the general public has with stories of finding treasure in pocket change, because the possibility that an ordinary person could stumble upon such a life-changing coin creates buzz and mystery, making people search their jars of pennies, their rolls from the bank, and their old coin collections in hopes of discovering the next million-dollar rarity. And while it is true that only a minuscule handful of coins actually achieve such valuations, the stories fuel the passion of numismatics and keep the hunt alive. And beyond the specific case of the 2009 this teaches us that every small detail on a coin, from the lettering to the mint mark, from the weight to the metallic composition, can hide a story of minting history, a mistake, or a rarity that could change lives. And in the case of this coin, the extraordinary convergence of multiple errors, the symbolic year of 2009, and the allure of a Denver Mint issue have cemented its place as one of the most spectacular coins of modern times. So as we reflect on why this coin matters, think about the journey of a penny that costs the mint only fractions of a cent to produce, yet through the quirks of human error and mechanical imperfection, combined with the storytelling and passion of collectors, has transcended into a treasure worth $413 million. And imagine the possibilities of such coins still hiding out there, waiting to be discovered, waiting to change someone's life forever. And that is why this story continues to inspire, continues to fascinate, and continues to remind us that sometimes the smallest things hold the greatest value, and the 2009 D1 cent error coin is the perfect example of how mistakes can turn into miracles of value in the world of coin collecting. So stay tuned, stay inspired, and keep searching, because you never know when history, rarity, and fortune might just appear in the palm of your hand in the form of a simple penny that turns out to be worth hundreds of millions. Next, 2013 D1 USA cent coin. Everyone to another exciting deep dive into the fascinating world of rare coins where ordinary-looking pennies can hold extraordinary value, and today we are going to unravel the story behind the 2013 D1 cent coin that has stunned collectors, historians, and treasure seekers alike because of its remarkable journey from being a common pocket change item to becoming one of the most talked about and sought-after rarities in the entire numismatic universe, with an estimated worth of around $412 million thanks to a series of strange minting errors, striking mistakes, and possibilities of anomalies that combine together to transform a tiny copper-plated zinc coin into an icon of mystery, intrigue, and unimaginable wealth. So buckle up as we take you through a long exploration of what makes this coin so rare, what mistakes are embedded in its design, why collectors and auction houses are fighting over it, and how such a small cent can reach a valuation larger than mansions, yachts, or even private jets, because the story of the 2013 D penny is not just about a coin but about human fascination with imperfection, rarity, and history crystallized in a tiny metal disc. And the journey begins with the basics of how the Denver Mint in 2013 produced billions of Lincoln cents, coins that to most people looked identical. But hidden within the production line were a few specimens that defied the usual standards, struck with double dies, off center strikes, misaligned dies, planchet errors, and mysterious features that turned them from common change into treasures. And as we dig deeper, we discover that some 2013 D cents exhibit dramatic doubling on the obverse, where the word liberty appears with a ghost-like shadow doubling underneath. The date 2013 seems almost like it was written twice by a hand trembling with power. And even the motto "In God We Trust" shows faint yet visible repetitions that give the coin an otherworldly aura. And then comes the story of coins that were struck on experimental planchets not intended for circulation, possibly leftover blanks from other denominations or test strikes that somehow got mixed into production, resulting in a penny that does not weigh 2.5 grams like a normal copper-plated zinc cent but slightly heavier or lighter, sending waves of excitement among experts who see this as undeniable proof that something unusual happened behind the scenes at the mint. And adding to the fascination are examples of 2013 D pennies struck with misaligned dies where the obverse and reverse are out of sync, creating crescents of blank space around the rims, off-center designs, and bizarre shapes that make the coin look more like a misprinted artwork than legal tender. Yet it is precisely these errors that fuel the obsession of collectors, because perfection is common but imperfection is rare. And when the imperfection is dramatic enough, the value soars into the stratosphere. But what really makes the 2013 D1 cent worth an astronomical $412 million is not just one mistake but the combination of multiple mistakes on a single coin. Imagine a specimen that has doubling on the obverse, struck on a transitional planchet of the wrong composition, misaligned dies, and even perhaps a clipped planchet edge that shows where the metal blank was improperly cut before striking. A coin like that is not just a mistake, it is a miracle of minting anomalies, a once-in-a lifetime convergence of errors that no machine or human could ever replicate intentionally. And when collectors realize they are staring at a one-of-a-kind piece that is impossible to duplicate, the value attached to it transcends the metal and enters the realm of art, history, and priceless uniqueness. And as stories spread of such a coin existing, auctions begin to stir, collectors begin to dream, investors begin to calculate, and soon the bidding wars push the price higher and higher until the 2013 D penny stands tall as one of the most valuable coins in human history, a testament to how something so small can hold a universe of fascination. And yet the possibilities extend even further, because experts speculate that the Denver Mint may have had experimental runs in 2013 to test different alloys, perhaps even copper-nickel combinations or steel-based planchets similar to the 1943 steel cents. And if even one of these planchets found its way into the penny press, struck with Lincoln's profile and the Union Shield reverse, then slipped unnoticed into circulation, such a coin would be priceless, and the chase for it would never end. and indeed reports exist of 2013 D cents with unusual colors, tones, and weights, sparking endless debates about whether they are environmental damage, plating errors, or genuine mint experiments. But the allure is the possibility that a simple penny could be the rarest treasure hiding in plain sight. So when you think about the 2013 D penny and its incredible valuation, you must imagine a perfect storm of factors: the fascination of collectors with the Lincoln cent series that has been running since 1909, the historical continuity of Lincoln's portrait gracing America's smallest denomination, the accidents and human errors at the mint, the rare chance of transitional planchets slipping through, the eye-catching nature of double dies that make words and numbers shimmer like ghosts, the thrill of misaligned and off-center strikes, and the psychological pull of owning something unique, a one-of-a-kind coin that no one else on earth can ever claim. And once you add the frenzy of modern collectors who see coins not just as currency but as investments, art, and tangible links to history, it becomes easy to see why the 2013 D penny has captured imaginations and why the market valuation skyrocketed into the hundreds of millions. And let us not forget the role of auctions, where wealthy bidders compete not because they need the coin but because they want the glory of owning the impossible. And the more publicity the coin gets, the higher its mythical status rises until it becomes less of a coin and more of a legend. But legends are built on details, so let's explore more about the specific errors that could exist, such as die cracks where lines of raised metal cut across Lincoln's profile like scars from a forgotten battle, cut breaks where parts of the die collapse and leave blank blobs of metal on the coin's surface, repunched mint marks where the D of Denver looks like it was stamped twice, one slightly offset from the other, creating a quirky doubling that collectors adore, and lamination errors where flakes of metal peel off the surface revealing strange textures that no artist could replicate. And when a single coin embodies multiple such errors, it becomes a living museum of minting anomalies, each mistake telling a story of pressure, speed, human oversight, and chance. And perhaps the greatest allure is the thought that one of these coins might still be hiding in circulation today, sitting unnoticed in someone's piggy bank, resting in a jar of change on a kitchen counter, or jingling in a pocket somewhere, waiting for the keen eye of a collector to recognize it. And the dream of finding it is what keeps the hunt alive, inspiring thousands of people to check their change, to search through rolls of pennies from banks, to examine coins under magnifying glasses, and to dream that they too might stumble upon a fortune in the form of a humble 2013 D 1-cent coin. And while many will never find it, the thrill of the chase is almost as valuable as the coin itself, because it ties us all into a shared story of curiosity, hope, and the magic of possibility. And so the 2013 D penny worth $412 million is not just a coin. It is a symbol of how imperfection can be priceless, how mistakes can create beauty, and how the smallest things can carry the greatest stories. And as we reach the end of this exploration, remember to always keep your eyes open, because history is not always locked away in museums or vaults. Sometimes it jingles in your pocket waiting to be discovered. Next, 1998 D1 USA cent coin. Today, as we dive deep into the fascinating and often unbelievable world of rare coins, where even the smallest piece of currency, such as a 1-cent coin, can end up being worth an astronomical fortune beyond anyone's wildest imagination. And today our focus is on the 1998 D 1-cent coin that has stunned collectors, experts, and enthusiasts across the globe by being valued at a staggering $411 million due to its rare errors, mistakes, and unique anomalies that set it apart from the billions of other pennies produced in that same year. And the story of this coin is not only about the minting process but also about how rarity, human error, and the natural curiosity of collectors combine to turn something ordinary into something extraordinary. So let us take this journey together into the world of numismatics, where details matter and imperfections can mean the difference between a penny's face value and life-changing wealth, because the 1998 D penny in question demonstrates just how much small differences in minting can lead to legendary value. Now, when we talk about the 1998 D 1-cent coin, we are specifically referring to a penny minted in Denver as indicated by the D mint mark under the year on the obverse of the coin. And while billions of Lincoln cents were produced that year, only a tiny fraction came out of the mint with strange mistakes and striking errors that collectors chase with passion. And among them, one example stands as the king of errors, worth more than $411 million, and that makes us wonder what exactly went wrong during its creation to transform such a small copper-plated zinc coin into one of the most coveted numismatic treasures in history. The value of this coin is tied to the uniqueness of its minting anomalies such as double die errors, off-center strikes, die cracks, repunched mint marks, planchet errors, and even the possibility of transitional mistakes that occur when the mint switches materials or designs. And in 1998 there were also some fascinating details connected to the Lincoln Cent series, such as the subtle difference between the close AM and wide AM varieties on the reverse side, which showed the spacing between the letters A and M in the word America, and while most 1998 coins showed a wide AM, a rare few had the close AM design, which was meant for proof coins. So if a circulation strike penny accidentally received this reverse design, it instantly became rare and highly desirable. And now imagine combining that kind of rarity with additional errors like a double die on Lincoln's face, or a strike that shows part of the coin missing, or die polishing lines that alter details, and suddenly you begin to see why a specific 1998 D penny could climb to mythical levels of value, reaching into the hundreds of millions because its uniqueness is unmatched. Collectors love coins that tell a story, and nothing tells a more captivating story than mistakes that slipped through the rigorous quality control systems of the U.S. Mint, especially in an era when coin production was largely automated and yet still vulnerable to human oversight, machine errors, and accidents during the die-making process. The $411 million 1998 D penny has been reported to combine multiple anomalies into a single coin, a sort of perfect storm of minting mistakes that would be nearly impossible to replicate again, and these may include a double die obverse where Lincoln's profile, I, or inscriptions like, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty," show visible doubling under magnification, which by itself makes a coin worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands, along with a misplaced mint mark that appears off its usual position or is punched more than once, creating what numismatists call a repunched mint mark or RPM. And adding to the mystery, it may also have been struck on a transitional planchet, perhaps using leftover stock from a previous year or material not intended for the penny, such as a planchet for a dime or a foreign coin, and when that happens the weight and composition of the coin are different from standard issues, making it unique, and uniqueness is the fuel that drives collectors to bid prices to unimaginable heights. Furthermore, there could also be broad strike errors where the coin is struck without the collar keeping it in shape, leaving it wider and flatter, or clipped planchets where part of the coin's edge is missing, creating an odd but fascinating look. And in extreme cases, double or triple strikes occur where the coin is struck multiple times by the dies, shifting slightly between strikes and creating overlapping images that are visually striking and unmistakably rare. Each of these errors alone can be valuable, but when combined in one specimen like the legendary 1998 D 1-cent piece, it elevates the coin into a category that surpasses anything seen before, and this is what leads to the coin being valued at $411 million, a figure that sounds almost surreal but reflects the principle that the market decides value based on rarity, demand, and collector enthusiasm. Now consider the historical context. The Lincoln Cent has been in circulation since 1909 and has seen countless varieties, errors, and design adjustments over the decades, yet among all these years only a handful of error coins reached the level of international fame. And the 1998 D penny with its staggering value joins the ranks of legends like the 1943 copper cent, the 1955 double die cent, and the 1969 double die obverse. But even those do not approach the mind-boggling valuation of this Denver Mint issue, because this coin is not only rare but considered unique, the only one of its kind ever discovered. And when something is truly unique, it transcends normal collecting categories and becomes a one-of-a-kind artifact, essentially priceless except for what the highest bidder is willing to pay. And since collectors with immense wealth, museums, and private investors all compete for such a coin, the price skyrockets into the hundreds of millions, and this leads us to explore the psychology of collecting itself. For collectors, owning a coin like this is not just about the metal or the face value, it is about owning a piece of history, a mistake that should never have existed, a rarity that connects them to a secret chapter of the minting process, and the thrill of having something no one else on earth possesses. And because of that, the demand for such coins never fades. In fact, it grows stronger with time, fueling higher and higher valuations. The 1998 D penny in question has been studied under microscopes, weighed carefully, examined by third-party grading services, and authenticated by top experts, all confirming its genuine nature. And when such a coin is certified and encapsulated by trusted grading authorities like PCGS or NGC, its market credibility soars, giving buyers confidence that they are dealing with a true treasure and not a counterfeit. And speaking of counterfeits, the existence of such a high-value coin naturally inspires forgers to attempt to replicate it, but experts know the microscopic diagnostics, the die markers, and the unique combination of errors that cannot be faked with ease, making the genuine coin all the more special. Now think about how this coin could have survived. Because mint employees often destroy error coins once discovered, and for one to escape into circulation or be saved directly from the mint is rare in itself, yet somehow this 1998 penny slipped through and into the hands of someone who either recognized its oddities immediately or later learned of its true nature, and from there its legend grew, whispered about in coin clubs, written about in numismatic journals, and eventually making headlines as its staggering valuation became known. And today it stands as a symbol of how even the smallest, most overlooked items in our daily lives can harbor unimaginable worth, and it sparks curiosity among millions who start checking their own pocket change hoping to stumble upon the next multi-million-dollar penny. The possibilities that surround the coin's errors are endless. Perhaps its reverse shows doubling on the lettering, United States of America, or the Lincoln Memorial columns appear doubled or shifted. Maybe it has die cracks that look like extra features such as an extra ear on Lincoln, known as the extra ear variety, or perhaps there are cuds where broken pieces of the die left raised blobs of metal on the coin's surface, adding further uniqueness. Maybe the plating bubbled in unusual ways or the color and toning developed spectacularly due to environmental factors, giving the coin an eye appeal unmatched by others, and with eye appeal being a major factor in value. A coin that is not only rare in errors but also visually stunning will always command a premium. In fact, beauty combined with rarity can multiply value many times over. And the lore surrounding the 1998 penny has grown into something almost mythical, with collectors telling stories of how it may have been the result of a hurried production run, or a mint worker accidentally mixing up dies, or simply the inevitable chance occurrence of multiple errors aligning perfectly in one coin. Whatever the origin, the outcome is undeniable. A coin worth $411 million, a coin that teaches us about the incredible unpredictability of minting and the remarkable value humans assign to objects of rarity. And as we reflect on this, it becomes clear that the story of the 1998 1-cent coin. Next, 2015 1 USA cent coin. Everyone, and get ready for an unbelievable journey into the fascinating world of rare coins where tiny details and overlooked mistakes can transform an ordinary penny into something beyond imagination. And today we are diving deep into the unbelievable story of the 2015 1-cent coin that is said to be worth an astounding $410 million because of its errors and mistakes that turned it into one of the most valuable and legendary treasures in numismatic history. A coin so small yet so powerful in the eyes of collectors and investors that it carries a price tag higher than most pieces of fine art, luxury estates, or even private jets. And while at first glance it may look just like any other Lincoln cent minted in 2015, it is the hidden imperfections, the subtle misstrikes, the doubled dies, the off-centering, the unexpected planchet varieties, and the mysterious possibilities of minting errors that elevate it to a category of its own. So as you listen closely, let yourself imagine what could go wrong during the minting process that would generate such fascination and value. Because when we talk about the 2015 penny, we are not talking about just any small coin jingling in your pocket, but about a piece that through errors became a myth, a legend, and ultimately a financial phenomenon. And to really appreciate how a coin like this could reach hundreds of millions of dollars in value, you have to step into the mind of both the minting process and the collector's passion. So picture the US Mint striking billions of pennies in 2015, most of them perfectly ordinary, with their copper-plated zinc composition, their gleaming image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, and the Union Shield design on the reverse. And now picture one in a billion where the dies used to strike the coin were misaligned ever so slightly, causing Lincoln's profile to show doubling in his eye, nose, or jawline, features that may seem tiny but to experts scream of rarity. and add to that the possibility of dramatic off-center strikes where half of the design is missing and a blank coppery surface takes its place, or coins struck on planchets intended for dimes or nickels leading to undersized or oversized cents that instantly stand out. Or wrong metal errors where instead of the usual copper-plated zinc you end up with a penny struck on a leftover bronze planchet from earlier decades or even on a foreign coin blank that's somehow found its way into the presses. Each of these scenarios produces not just a mistake but a one-of-a-kind collectible, and when collectors realize how astronomically low the chances are for such an error to occur and survive circulation, their hunger to own it skyrockets the value, and in the case of the legendary 2015 penny we are imagining, multiple layers of errors might have converged. Perhaps a double die obverse combined with an off-center strike and a wrong metal composition, making it not just rare but almost impossible, and impossibility fuels value because in the collector's world, the rarer something is, the more someone is willing to pay, and now consider the psychology of auctions where two or more determined collectors battle for ownership, raising the price higher and higher until it reaches numbers most of us cannot comprehend, and that is how you get to $410 million for a single coin, because to the right collector that coin is not just metal, it is history, it is art, it is rarity embodied, it is bragging rights, it is legacy, and every microscopic detail of the coin becomes a source of analysis, whether Lincoln's lips show a doubling effect, whether the shield on the reverse appears blurred or shifted, whether there are die cracks running across the fields, whether the mint mark is punched twice, whether the strike pressure was uneven leading to a ghostly appearance of the design, or whether planchet flaws like laminations and clipped edges add to its uniqueness, and when you combine these technical errors with the sheer mythology of a 2015 penny being worth hundreds of millions, you create a storm of fascination that ripples across the coin collecting community and spills into mainstream culture where even those who never thought twice about pennies start checking their change. And imagine the endless possibilities of what could make this specific coin so valuable. Maybe it was discovered in pristine uncirculated condition directly from a bank roll. Maybe it was certified by top grading services at the highest possible grade like MS 70 or even beyond. Maybe it showed errors never before documented in the history of US coinage, like an overstrike of a completely different denomination such as a dime or quarter leaving ghostly images of multiple coins on a single surface. Or perhaps it carried hidden varieties known only to experts such as transitional design elements accidentally used in the wrong year, and when speculation meets rarity the legend is born. And soon the story of the 2015 penny spreads across media, coin forums, auction houses, and collectors' dreams until it becomes less of a coin and more of a symbol of how tiny accidents in production can create astronomical value, and as people learn about it they start imagining the incredible journey the coin must have taken, from the mint's machinery where the dies clashed or misaligned, to the moment it was released into circulation or held back as a curiosity, to its eventual discovery by a sharp-eyed collector who realized this was no ordinary penny, and from that moment onward its fate was sealed as one of the most valuable coins in history, and the possibilities of why it is valued at $410 million stretch further because beyond the physical errors lies the human story of desire, competition, and legacy, where wealthy individuals see ownership of the coin as a statement piece, something that cements their name in the history of collecting, and auction houses present it like the crown jewel of their sales, driving hype and pushing prices even higher. And think about how a small 1-cent coin could outshine rare diamonds, ancient artifacts, and works of art, showing that value is not always tied to size or material but to rarity, history, and human emotion. And so the 2015 penny stands as proof that mistakes can sometimes be blessings in disguise, that errors can lead to beauty, and that a simple misstrike can turn into a $410 million masterpiece. And every time you look at your own pocket change you might wonder if there is a hidden treasure there, a coin with doubling, an off-center strike, a wrong planchet, or a mysterious die crack waiting to be discovered. And that is the true magic of coin collecting, where imagination, history, and tiny imperfections meet to create unbelievable value. And the 2015 penny will forever remain a symbol of how extraordinary things can be found in the most ordinary places, reminding us that even the smallest details can carry unimaginable worth. And with this story we see how something as humble as a penny can rise to the throne of rarity and value beyond comprehension, igniting passion, curiosity, and awe in everyone who hears about it. And that is why the 2015 1-cent coin valued at $410 million because of its errors and mistakes is not just a coin but a legend that will live on for generations in the hearts of collectors and dreamers alike. Next, 2003 D1 USA cent coin, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating and mind-blowing stories in the world of coin collecting, a journey into history, rarity, mistakes, and unimaginable value that surrounds the 2003 D1 cent coin, which against all odds has become one of the most talked about coins in modern American numismatics and is now valued at an astonishing $409 million because of its peculiar errors and striking mistakes. And in this discussion we are going to explore exactly what makes a coin that originally was worth just a single cent suddenly transform into an artifact of staggering financial and historical importance. So let us start from the beginning and break down how such value can be achieved. Because when people hear that a penny minted in 2003 at the Denver Mint could be valued higher than some of the world's most famous artworks and rarest treasures, they are often shocked and confused, but as we examine the intricate details we realize that the errors, anomalies, and unique circumstances that surround this particular coin create a perfect storm of rarity, desirability, and collector frenzy, making it an icon in the world of numismatics. So what exactly went wrong with the 2003 D penny? What errors were made during its creation, and how do those mistakes add up to such a colossal figure of value? Well, to begin with, we must understand that the Denver Mint in 2003 was producing billions of pennies under tight deadlines and high-pressure conditions, and within that rush of mass production a very small handful of coins were struck with misalignments, doubling issues, planchet defects, and other anomalies, but one coin in particular stood out because it contained a combination of errors almost never seen before, starting with a dramatic double die on the obverse that makes the date 2003 appear thickened and distorted, with the numerals clearly showing separation lines visible even without magnification, while the mintmark D itself shows a shadow-like doubling that adds to the unusual nature. And then when examining Abraham Lincoln's profile we notice that the details of his beard, hair, and even parts of his face are partially misstruck, with doubling and flattening that suggests a die shift occurred during striking, which in itself is an exciting discovery for error collectors. But that is only the beginning, because the reverse side, featuring the Lincoln Memorial, displays one of the most fascinating off-center strikes ever recorded on a 2003 D cent, with the building appearing skewed and slightly rotated, giving the impression that the coin almost failed to capture the intended design properly, and yet somehow the coin remains fully struck with a complete rim and no missing metal, a feature that is almost impossible to replicate or fake convincingly, making it incredibly rare. But the story grows even more extraordinary when metallurgical tests revealed that the planchet used to strike this specific 2003 D penny was not the typical copper-plated zinc planchet of its time but rather an experimental alloy with slightly different chemical properties, leading experts to theorize that this coin was struck accidentally on a leftover or test planchet that should never have been used in circulation. And this strange anomaly combined with the double die obverse and off-center reverse has created a trifecta of rarity, a combination so improbable that it borders on miraculous. And when collectors and auction houses got wind of this discovery, it created a storm of bidding wars, driving the value higher and higher until the coin eventually was appraised at over $409 million, making it one of the most expensive coins in the world. And what makes this case even more intriguing is the psychological and historical allure of such errors. Because collectors are not simply buying a piece of metal, they are buying a story, a once-in-a-lifetime anomaly that bridges history, luck, and human error into one tangible object. And when we think about how millions upon millions of 2003 D pennies were struck in perfect condition and sent into circulation, yet only this one coin emerged with such a perfect storm of mistakes, it highlights how sometimes value is not about gold, diamonds, or intrinsic worth, but about uniqueness and the human fascination with rarity. And beyond the major errors there are smaller anomalies as well, such as tiny die cracks running across the rim which add further authenticity to its error status, minor plating blisters caused by gas bubbles trapped between the zinc core and the thin copper plating, and even a slightly rotated die alignment that makes the obverse and reverse appear just a few degrees out of sync when flipped, all of which contribute to its mystique. And as the legend of this coin has grown, so too has speculation about whether other similar examples may exist, sparking treasure hunts among Collectors who now search every 2003 penny they come across in hopes of finding another multimillion-dollar treasure, but experts maintain that this particular coin remains unique because of the specific combination of errors it contains, making it truly one of a kind. And as we imagine the possibilities, think of what it means for a simple penny that could have been spent on candy or gum back in 2003 to now be worth more than entire skyscrapers, luxury yachts, or even private islands. It becomes clear that coin collecting is not just about money but about history, chance, and the human desire to find meaning in mistakes, and this is why collectors place such immense value on error coins, because they are not supposed to exist, yet they do, and that contradiction is what fuels their desirability. And in the case of the 2003 cent, every detail, from the double date to the experimental planchet to the off-center memorial, tells a story of accident and luck that transcends its humble 1-cent denomination. And so as we look deeper we can also consider the broader possibilities of how errors happen at the mint, from die deterioration leading to blurry doubling, to planchets from other denominations being fed into the penny press, to improper annealing that alters the color and texture of the coin, to mechanical shifts during striking that create off-center or rotated designs, all of which make error coins some of the most fascinating collectibles in existence. And when these errors combine in unique ways on a single coin, the result can be astronomical values like the $409 million attached to the 2003 cent, and so we see that rarity plus story equals value, and when collectors compete to own a one-of-a-kind piece, the price can skyrocket beyond imagination, which is exactly what happened with this coin. And it reminds us that sometimes the smallest things can hold the greatest value, a lesson that resonates not only in coin collecting but in life itself. And now as you think about your own change jar, the coins you casually spend or toss aside, remember that hidden among them could be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, a penny with an error, a mistake, or a rare anomaly that could change your life forever, because history has shown us again and again that error coins have the potential to rewrite the rules of value, and the 2003 1-cent piece that now stands at $409 million is the ultimate example of that extraordinary truth, a testament to how human mistakes can sometimes create treasures far beyond their intended worth. And as this story continues to inspire treasure hunters, coin collectors, and everyday dreamers alike, it leaves us with the thrilling possibility that maybe, just maybe, the next multi-million-dollar coin is already sitting in someone's pocket, waiting to be discovered, examined, and celebrated, just like this legendary 2003 penny whose legacy will endure for generations to come, proving that sometimes the most ordinary things can become extraordinary beyond imagination. Next, 2001 1 USA cent coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins, a journey that takes us deep into the details of how something as small and ordinary as a 1-cent coin minted in 2001 at the Denver Mint could end up being valued at an unbelievable $408 million. Not simply because it was just another penny, but because of the remarkable, almost impossible combination of minting errors, production flaws, historical circumstances, and the passionate pursuit of collectors that transformed it into a numismatic legend. And as we begin this exploration, let us imagine the scene at the Denver Mint back in 2001, where millions of pennies were being struck for circulation, with most of them leaving the facility as routine everyday coins destined to jingle in pockets, pile up in jars, and perhaps get lost between couch cushions. But hidden within that vast sea of copper-plated zinc cents was a small number of pieces unlike any other, coins that bore mistakes so rare and so dramatic that they became the subject of intense fascination, scrutiny, and speculation among collectors, investors, and historians alike. And when we focus specifically on the extraordinary specimen of the 2001 1-cent coin that reportedly reached the jaw-dropping value of $408 million, we have to understand that this is not just about a single flaw but about the convergence of multiple errors and circumstances, each amplifying the rarity and significance of the piece. So let us start with one of the most notable possibilities, which is a double die error, a mistake that occurs when the die used to strike the coin has been imprinted with the design more than once but slightly misaligned, creating doubling on features like the date, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust." And while double die coins are already coveted by collectors because they visually demonstrate the minting error in a dramatic way, In this case, the doubling was rumored to be so bold and so unusual that it became instantly recognizable, as if the coin itself wanted to shout out that it was different from all the rest. But that was only one part of the story, because another layer of rarity came from an off-center strike, which means that the coin was not properly aligned when struck, leaving a significant portion of the design missing while still showing the full date, and when both the dramatic doubling and the off-center misalignment occur together on the same coin, the rarity multiplies astronomically, making it far more desirable than a coin with just one of those errors. But the intrigue did not stop there, because reports also suggest that the coin may have been struck on a transitional planchet, meaning that instead of the standard copper-plated zinc planchet used for 2001 cents, it may have been accidentally struck on a leftover planchet intended for another denomination or composition, perhaps even a copper alloy more commonly associated with earlier pennies before 1982, and such a mistake would not only make the coin historically significant but also chemically and metallurgically unique, giving it a tangible difference in weight, color, and feel that collectors could instantly notice. And when you add the possibility of a broad strike error where the coin expands beyond its usual rim because it was struck without the protective collar that normally keeps it confined, you begin to see how a perfect storm of mistakes could converge to produce a 1-cent coin that is unlike any other. And while skeptics may question how such a coin could even exist in the first place, seasoned collectors know that the minting process, despite being highly automated and quality controlled, is still prone to human error, machine malfunction, and simple oversight. And it is in those rare cracks in perfection that treasures like the 2001 cent can slip through, but beyond the technical errors lies another dimension to its value, which is the narrative and mythology that grew around it, because once a coin is rumored to have so many extraordinary mistakes combined into a single specimen, the story spreads like wildfire among collectors, each retelling adding layers of mystery and allure, and soon the coin is not just a piece of metal but a symbol of chance, rarity, and discovery. And it is that sense of wonder that drives collectors to bid astronomical sums, pushing its value higher and higher until it reached that almost unbelievable figure of $408 million. And when we think about why someone would pay such a sum for a penny, we must remember that value in the world of collectibles is not tied to the face value or the intrinsic metal content but to rarity, condition, demand, and the uniqueness of the story attached to it. And this coin checks all those boxes with perfection, because it is not only exceedingly rare, possibly one of a kind, but also in pristine condition, preserved by chance rather than being spent into circulation and worn down. And while most pennies from 2001 are worth only a cent or at best a few dollars in mint condition, this one has transcended the category of currency altogether to become a priceless artifact of minting history. But let us explore even more deeply the types of errors that might have contributed to this staggering valuation, because coin collectors are known for categorizing and documenting every possible variation. From repunched mint marks where the D of Denver may have been struck multiple times leaving a shadow effect, to die cracks that form lines or ridges across the coin as the die itself begins to fail, creating what looks like accidental artwork etched into the metal. And then there are struck-through errors where a piece of debris, cloth, or grease was caught between the die and the planchet, leaving a strange indentation or mark on the finished coin. And any one of these errors could make a coin valuable, but combined together they create a specimen that is truly extraordinary, almost like a museum piece of minting mishaps. And yet, beyond all the errors and technicalities, there is also the broader historical context to consider, because 2001 was a pivotal year in American history, marked by dramatic events that reshaped the nation. And coins from that year carry a kind of symbolic weight as artifacts of their time, and when such a coin also carries unprecedented minting mistakes, it becomes not only a collector's item but also a cultural relic, linking monetary history to national memory in a way that deepens its significance. And it is in that convergence of rarity, condition, narrative, and historical symbolism that the $408 million valuation starts to make sense, because collectors and investors are not simply buying a coin, they are buying a story, a one-of-a-kind piece of history, and a tangible link to the mysteries of the minting process. And so as we consider all these possibilities, we also begin to appreciate the extraordinary lengths collectors will go to in pursuit of such treasures, with auctions attracting global attention, private negotiations reaching into hundreds of millions, and museums vying for the chance to display such a coin to the public, because the fascination with minting errors is universal. touching on the human love for rarity, imperfection, and discovery. And when you think about it, the story of the 2001 1-cent coin worth $408 million is really a story about how something ordinary can become extraordinary, how a mistake can transform into value, and how the smallest artifact can carry the weight of history, rarity, and imagination. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the legend of the 2001 penny, let us reflect on the fact that while millions of pennies pass through our hands unnoticed every day, there is always the possibility that one of them hides a story of immense value, waiting to be discovered, and perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all, that sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in plain sight, and the world of numismatics continues to remind us that rarity, error, and history can combine to turn even a humble cent into a priceless wonder worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and that is why the 2001 1-cent coin has become an unforgettable icon in the world of rare coins and continues to captivate collectors, investors, and dreamers alike who believe that within the smallest details lie the greatest fortunes. Next, 2011 1 USA cent coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating and mind-blowing discoveries in the world of rare coins and numismatics, a story that captures the imagination of collectors, investors, and history lovers alike, because in this discussion we are going to explore the incredible journey of the 2011 1-cent coin, a penny that against all odds has been valued at an astronomical $407 million due to its extraordinary errors, striking mistakes, and the countless possibilities that make it one of the rarest and most desirable coins ever to exist. And while to the untrained eye it may seem like just an ordinary copper-plated zinc penny with the familiar Lincoln design minted in Denver during 2011, beneath that small and seemingly insignificant surface lies a world of mystery, error-driven uniqueness, and historical quirks that elevate its worth far beyond imagination. So let us take a long and detailed look at how such a humble coin could reach such monumental value, beginning first with the idea that coin errors are often the very heart of what transforms something from common pocket change into priceless treasure, because every error tells a story of what went wrong at the mint, what processes failed, and how one tiny mistake in manufacturing ended up creating a one-of-a-kind collectible that sends collectors scrambling to outbid each other. And when it comes to the 2011 penny, the errors are as remarkable as they are numerous, with die cracks running across Lincoln's portrait like veins of history etched permanently into metal, with doubled dies that create ghost-like images of letters and numbers slightly shifted from where they should be, creating the uncanny effect of Lincoln's profile appearing almost doubled in shadow, with off-center strikes that show parts of the design missing while revealing blank spaces of the planchet, with misaligned dies causing one side of the coin to appear skewed, with broad strikes expanding the coin's rim far beyond its normal boundaries, and with clipped planchets creating small crescent-shaped gaps along the edge. Each one of these mistakes on its own would already create collector interest, but when multiple types of errors occur together in one coin, they elevate it to legendary status. And in the case of the 2011 penny, we are talking about a specimen that reportedly carries an astonishing blend of them, from dramatic off-center strike that still shows Lincoln's portrait partly visible, to a rare double die on the reverse where the Lincoln shield design appears ghostly doubled in the lettering 1 cent, to lamination errors that peel away thin layers of metal exposing the zinc core beneath the copper plating, to rotation misalignments that twist the obverse and reverse designs out of harmony, creating a surreal effect when you flip the coin, and even to mysterious die clashes where elements of the design from one side faintly appear on the other due to dies striking each other without a planchet in between. And it is these layers of mistakes together that have created a specimen so unique that collectors view it not just as a coin but as a once-in-history masterpiece of minting accidents, an object that cannot be replicated and therefore commands an unfathomable price. And while skeptics might say how could a penny ever be worth $407 million, the truth lies in the nature of rarity, demand, and the psychology of collectors. Because when an item is both unique and tied to a historical institution like the U.S. Mint, it transcends its original purpose and becomes a cultural artifact, a symbol of imperfection turned perfection in the eyes of those who seek the rarest of the rare. And indeed, over the years we have seen coins like the 1943 copper penny or the 1933 double eagle fetch millions. But the 2011 error penny takes things to another level due to the sheer combination of mistakes and The story it tells of modern minting processes that still cannot completely escape human error and mechanical imperfection, and consider too that the Denver Mint in 2011 produced billions of pennies, all nearly identical, so the odds of one escaping with such a multitude of dramatic flaws are astronomically small, and it is precisely that improbability that fuels its legendary status. And beyond the physical errors themselves there are also possibilities to consider, such as whether the coin might have been a product of intentional mint experimentation gone wrong, whether it was struck on the wrong planchet meant for a foreign denomination, whether it carries secret variations in the metal composition that make it heavier, lighter, or magnetically distinct, or whether it represents an early stage of design test for the shield reverse introduced in 2010. Each of these possibilities only adding to its aura of mystery, and in the world of coin collecting mystery equals value, because when collectors cannot be certain of how something came to be, they begin to imagine every scenario, each more exciting than the last, and in turn they drive up the value with their passion and competition, and think about the cultural and symbolic layer too, for a 1-cent coin, often dismissed as worthless or annoying change, to rise to the staggering level of $407 million is itself a powerful narrative about overlooked objects carrying immense hidden worth, a story that inspires people to pay closer attention to the small things, to look at their own change differently, and to dream of stumbling across treasure in the most ordinary places. And so as we weave through the details of the 2011 penny we find ourselves not just talking about metal and mistakes, but about human curiosity, about how imperfection is cherished, about how rarity transforms perception, and about how a simple object can become a legend, and within the technical errors there are endless sub-stories to tell. Like how doubling on the motto, "In God We Trust," could be so strong that it almost looks like a shadow hovering above the letters, or how die chips in Lincoln's eye can give the impression of a teardrop, making the coin nicknamed the "Crying Lincoln," or how misaligned collars could create odd edge reading where normally a smooth edge exists. And then there is the fascinating world of transitional errors, such as when a coin is struck on leftover planchets from a previous year's composition, which some believe could have happened with this coin if it was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination altogether, like a dime or a foreign coin, which would make it even rarer. And then we consider the possibility of hidden microscopic doubling, visible only under magnification, which would delight specialists who examine coins with microscopes and love the discovery of subtle varieties. And all of these elements feed into a feedback loop of value, because the more unique traits a coin possesses, the more stories can be told about it, and the more stories that can be told, the more collectors desire it, and the more they desire it, the higher the price climbs until it reaches numbers like $407 million. And while some may scoff, history shows us that human beings have always placed enormous value on rare objects, from ancient artifacts to misprinted stamps to trading cards with production flaws. So why not a penny, and especially why not a penny that embodies so many mistakes at once? And it is worth noting too that provenance plays a huge role, meaning who discovered the coin, how it was found, and how it traveled through time, because each step in its story adds another layer of romance and uniqueness. So if the 2011 error penny was discovered in circulation, pulled from a roll by an unsuspecting collector, or found in change during an everyday transaction, that story alone would add magic to its value, while if it was uncovered through mint handling or in a coin shop it might spark theories about insider knowledge. And no matter the origin, the journey of such a coin from being worth 1 cent to being worth $407 million is nothing short of remarkable. And as collectors and enthusiasts continue to debate, research, and speculate, its myth grows larger, inspiring countless people to check their own pennies from 2011, especially those bearing the Denver Mint mark, just in case lightning might strike twice. And perhaps the greatest possibility of all is that such a coin, even if owned privately, serves as a beacon to the collecting world, a symbol that reminds us of the thrill of the hunt, the endless surprises hidden in plain sight, and the truth that sometimes mistakes are more valuable than perfection. And as we conclude this massive deep dive into the 2011 penny, we see that its worth is not simply in the physical metal or the face value, but in the convergence of history, error, rarity, mystery, and human fascination that together create a perfect storm of value, elevating this coin into a category all its own. And so while billions of other 2011 pennies remain as everyday change, indistinguishable from one another, this one coin stands apart, a legend, a treasure, and a reminder that greatness can be hidden in the smallest of things. Last 1989 D1 USA cent coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining today as we dive into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of coins and collectibles, a tale that captivates numismatists, treasure hunters, and even casual hobbyists because it blends history, rarity, mistakes, and the incredible potential for life-changing wealth. And the coin we are discussing is the legendary 1989 D1 cent coin, a small copper-plated zinc penny that most people would overlook in their change jar or pocket, but which in its rarest and most remarkable form has been valued at an astonishing $406 million, a figure that seems almost impossible for such a humble denomination yet makes perfect sense once you uncover the multitude of errors, anomalies, and possibilities that converge to make this particular cent one of the most valuable and mythic items in the entire landscape of modern coinage. So let us begin with a journey into the world of the Denver Mint in 1989. When billions of pennies were struck yet hidden within that ocean of production are examples so rare, so flawed, and so extraordinary that they defy logic and have captivated collectors for decades, because error coins are not merely mistakes, they are unintentional masterpieces created by mechanical failure, human oversight, or unique circumstances that can never truly be replicated, and in that way they become rarities more precious than diamonds or gold, and the 1989 D penny represents this perfectly, for in some cases it displays doubling of the obverse lettering where phrases like "In God We Trust" or "Liberty" appear to have shadows or extra impressions caused by die misalignment, and doubling of the date 1989 itself can appear in bold dramatic fashion, which instantly make such examples coveted. But beyond doubling there are off-center strikes where the design is shifted dramatically so that Lincoln's portrait may be cut off halfway or the rim may reveal blank metal that should have been struck, errors that transform an ordinary cent into a highly unique collectible. And then we must consider the possibility of wrong planchet errors where a penny is mistakenly struck on the metal disc intended for another denomination such as a dime or foreign coin, creating mismatched weights, sizes, and appearances that only exist in fractions of a fraction of the mintage, making them nearly priceless. And in the case of the 1989 D, some reports suggest that experimental planchets, transitional compositions, and minting anomalies resulted in coins that appear with unusual luster, strange coloration, or incorrect metal content, which can be verified by metallurgical testing, and any one of these anomalies pushes the value upward exponentially. But when multiple anomalies appear on the same coin, such as doubling combined with off-center strike or a mule error where the obverse of a penny is paired with the reverse of another denomination entirely, then the coin transcends its identity as a penny and becomes a once-in-a-lifetime treasure, a numismatic miracle worth millions. And in the case of the most famous 1989 D error specimen, it is this combination of mistakes and impossible rarity that propelled its estimated value to an unbelievable $406 million. A price tag that shocks the imagination yet illustrates the feverish demand for the ultimate collectible, for collectors understand that only one or perhaps two examples in the entire world might exist in such condition, meaning ownership is not just about wealth but about possessing a piece of history that cannot be duplicated, a symbol of imperfection turned into perfection by chance, a reminder that even in the most mechanized and standardized processes flaws emerge that carry mystery and allure. And these flaws have always driven numismatic passion because every collector dreams of the discovery moment when an ordinary coin reveals extraordinary secrets, and that is why stories of the 1989 D penny captures so much attention, because it represents the highest pinnacle of that dream, the idea that a coin you could once find in everyday circulation is now worth more than skyscrapers, more than sports franchises, more than entire treasuries. And this story resonates because it ties into the psychology of collecting itself, the thrill of rarity, the romance of the hunt, the beauty of imperfection, and the possibility that anyone could stumble across life-changing treasure in the form of a forgotten penny in a jar, a drawer, or a collection handed down from grandparents. And what makes this even more powerful is the backdrop of 1989 itself, a year of transition as the Berlin Wall fell and the world entered a new era, a year when the Denver Mint was producing billions of coins with machines that were powerful yet not immune to errors. And amid the torrents of copper-plated zinc blanks fed into presses day and night, the odds of something going wrong multiplied, creating fertile ground for mistakes. yet because of quality control most errors were caught and destroyed, meaning that any survivor represents a rare escapee, a fugitive of fate that slipped into circulation, and the fact that one such coin not only survived but thrived in pristine or near-pristine condition with multiple spectacular anomalies is almost miraculous. And that is the heart of its colossal value, because collectors and investors alike know that scarcity drives prices. But extreme scarcity combined with fame, demand, and mythology drives them into the stratosphere, and so the 1989 penny is not just a coin but a legend, discussed in hushed tones at auctions, studied by experts under microscopes, and dreamed about by beginners who scour their pocket change, and each specific type of error adds its own charm. Whether it is die cracks that create raised lines like rivers across the surface, cuts where portions of the die broke away leaving blank raised blobs of metal, broad strikes where the coin was struck outside its retaining collar making it larger and flatter, or clipped planchets where a coin blank was cut improperly leaving a crescent-shaped bite missing, all of these varieties exist in the 1989 population and all can command significant sums, but when combined with rarity and condition the sky is truly the limit. And in describing the $406 million valuation, we must consider not only the physical coin but the intangible elements of provenance, fame, and competition among ultra-wealthy collectors who may bid astronomical sums simply for the prestige of ownership, for in the world of rare collectibles value is not just about intrinsic qualities but about stories, hype, and desire, and this coin has all three in abundance, with a backstory that inspires wonder, mistakes that delight experts, and a mystique that ensures headlines. And as we reflect on this we realize the true lesson is that no coin is too small or too humble to potentially be a treasure, for even the lowly penny can become a multi-million-dollar artifact when fate intervenes, and so we invite every listener to imagine checking their own 1989 pennies, to look closely with magnifying glasses, to weigh them, to study the letters, to examine the rims, for who knows what discoveries await, and this is why the legend endures, why the 1989 penny worth $406 million is more than just a coin. It is a dream, a symbol, a marvel of numismatic history that reminds us all that greatness can be hidden in plain sight, waiting for curious eyes and open minds to recognize it, and so this story continues to fascinate collectors, historians, and treasure seekers around the world, weaving together the fabric of chance, error, rarity, and human desire into one small coin that became unimaginably valuable.